Hello, hello. Thank you so much for tuning into this ASMR true crime soft spoken video. Today I'm going to be doing a requested case, and I really hope I can do this case justice. I tried to look up as many articles and interviews I could to get as much information as possible. So today we're going to be talking about the unsolved case of Chad Maurer. Chad Lee Maurer was born May 11th, 1971 in Madison, Wisconsin. He was born to John and Dolly Maurer. Chad's parents moved from Freeport, Illinois to Madison in 1970. 2 weeks later, his mother found out she was pregnant. Chad's parents were self-employed. John ran a carpet and upholstery cleaning service, while Dolly owned a flourishing house cleaning service. Chad was a 1989 graduate of La Follette High School. He was described as a popular student and a well-rounded athlete. He was an avid BMX racer and a member of the American Bicycle Association, and was active in both mountain biking and snowboarding. So in 1990, Chad is 19 years old. He's living with his parents in Madison, Wisconsin. He had graduated high school the previous year and was saving up money to move to Boulder, Colorado, and attend college there. His friends say Chad wanted to race mountain bikes in Colorado, so he began putting money away and planning for his future. Chad started a new job at a bicycle shop called Village Peddler, and he had his second shift starting on the morning of May 19th. At 12:20 p.m. on May 19th, Chad returned home on his lunch break in his father's 1968 Mustang to grab some sandwiches, and he told his parents he was going back to the shop because it was busy. His mother states there was nothing about him that was different. He wasn't on edge. He was just excited about the job, and he had a big smile on his face as usual. He then asked his dad to borrow $20 for gas before driving away. The drive from their apartment to the bike shop was about a 10-minute drive. About an hour later, John and Dolly went to buy something at the hardware store located just a few doors down from the Village Peddler. When they arrived, they noticed that the Mustang wasn't in the parking lot. They went into the bike shop to look for Chad, but no one working there seemed to know where he was. Chad failed to come home that night. When Chad had not returned home by the following morning, his mother began calling his friends. They had not heard from him, and they said the last they saw him was on Friday, May 18th, for a couple hours at a party. John then went and filed a missing persons report with local police. On the morning of May 21st, a maintenance worker entered an unlocked garage at a newly constructed housing complex located in Wentworth Gardens. This was located 150 miles away in the south side of Chicago, which was one of the roughest neighborhoods in the country. So this maintenance dude saw a Mustang parked in there and discovered a body that was slumped over in the driver's seat. The keys and the ignition were turned on, but the car had been running for so long that the battery was dead and the fuel tank was empty. It was later discovered to be identified as Chad. When Chicago police arrived and began looking at the scene, there were multiple fingerprints smeared with blood on the car window, but it's unclear if investigators had them examined. A Cook County medical examiner ruled Chad Maurer's death a suicide and the cause of death, carbon monoxide poisoning. No drugs or alcohol were found in his system. The Chicago police contacted his parents with the tragic news that their son had died and that he was being declared a suicide. His parents were in complete disbelief that this was a suicide. There had been no indications that he was depressed or suicidal. His mom said, "My system was into shock. My brain went into shock. Chad had too much going for him. Chad had all his friends, and Chad loved life. Chad was not depressed. Chad was not down. He had so many goals." Chad's body was transported back to Madison as his parents prepared for the funeral. His parents finally saw him in his casket before his funeral and were surprised to see a number of marks and bruises on his face and upper body, and his knuckles were skinned to the bone, which suggested that he may have been in a violent altercation. The funeral director showed his parents the clothing Chad had been wearing, and it turned out his t-shirt was stained with blood, and there were skid marks on the seat of his pants to suggest he was dragged along a hard surface. His parents contacted the local sheriff, and when the Dane County Sheriff's Office was informed about this, they convinced John and Dolly to delay the burial of Chad's body in order to perform a new examination. Dane County Coroner Ray Wosapak examined Chad's body and discovered additional bruises to Chad's groin. The sheriff's department said that the Chicago PD did not note some of the injuries that the coroner had found. They also arranged for the Chicago PD to send them the autopsy report and crime scene photos. And when his parents looked at the photos, they were surprised to see a jacket on the passenger side and the seat next to Chad's body, which they believed did not belong to him. In fact, the last time Dolly saw Chad at their home, She asked him if he wanted to take a jacket, and he said no. When the Dane County Sheriff's Office requested to see the jacket, the Chicago PD told them it had gone missing because officers towed the car and someone had taken it. They could not secure the vehicle because the window had been knocked out. The jacket was another clue pointing to the involvement of an unknown person in Chad's death. An autopsy conducted by the Cook County Medical Examiner's Office, the office that had ruled the manner of death undetermined, cited 6 hand and facial bruises, and that there was no evidence of trauma. But in Madison, the Dane County Coroner's Office, at the request of the local sheriff's department, looked at Chad and found other bruises, including those in the mouth. Ray Dames, who's an executive director of Cook County office in Chicago, downplays the differences. He says, quote, "Is it really important to make a note of every single mark? If he had 100 marks or 125 marks, does it really make a difference? It was carbon monoxide poisoning." The pathologist handled this case perfectly. There is no question Maurer was involved in a fight. However, it had nothing to do with the cause of death. Should someone investigate where he got the marks? Probably. Which is so irritating that was his response. Like, yeah, the pathologist did not handle the case perfectly. And yeah, he needs to mark down every single bruise and mark. That's a huge thing in any kind of investigation. But the new autopsy report also suggested that Chad had not taken his own life. The level of carbon monoxide in his body was 74%, which is much higher than the usual found in a suicide. While the findings proved that Chad had died from carbon monoxide poisoning, the extremely high levels suggested that he had been put in the car while unconscious, rather than getting into the car under his own power. Dane County Sheriff's Department Detective David Boingvovani stated, "My understanding is that the levels where they're conscious at the time they succumb to carbon monoxide is about 50 to 60%. Levels that get up to 74 to 80% are consistent with a person being unconscious or sleeping when they succumb to carbon monoxide poisoning, and that is because people naturally have the tendency to breathe deeper and more methodically when they are sleeping than when they're awake." The cause of Chad's death was changed from suicide to undetermined, and authorities began a full-blown investigation. Chad's boss at the Village Peddler was interviewed in a local newspaper article and stated that in the days prior to his death, he got the impression that Chad appeared to be afraid of something. Shortly after the article was published, some gunshots were fired through the bicycle shop's front window, though it was apparently determined that the shots were unconnected to Chad's case. Chad's story was aired on a local Crime Stoppers program in Madison in 1990. After the broadcast, a caller left a disturbing tip alleging that Chad was involved in a drug deal with people who lived in his apartment complex. Police were able to find 3 individuals who had moved from Chicago to Madison only a few weeks prior to Chad's death, and one of them would later be arrested and sentenced to 27 years for another crime. A friend told Chad's mother that he was paid twice for transporting a drug dealer to Chicago in 1989. Chad also smoked marijuana and had taken LSD a few times. Sergeant John W. Ridges with the Chicago Police Department states, "We know through our intelligence sources that there is a pipeline of narcotics trafficking from Chicago to Madison. Now, there's nothing in Chad's background that would really suggest that he was involved with narcotics. There's a possibility that he might have been tricked into being involved in narcotics and narcotics trafficking. No conclusive evidence was ever found to support the rumors that Chad had become involved in drug trafficking, and his death remains unsolved." So here are the theories in this case. One theory goes with the possibility that Chad was involved with the drug pipeline and was possibly offered money to make a trip, and then was met with a foul play. He may have been willing to do this order if he really wanted money to obtain his goal to move and attend college. It could also be possible he drove into Chicago in order to buy drugs. This to me personally feels like a stretch to do, considering he just mostly smoked weed. I don't think you drive into Chicago just for weed, but a toxicology report found no trace of drugs or alcohol in Chad's system at the time of his death. So the boss at the bike shop who was interviewed was also later said in 1991, quote, "I think he was on the run from something. It was unlike him to leave without saying anything. The next we heard, he turns up dead in Chicago." Which honestly, this had me a little confused, because it seems like he just started the job. So how does this dude know squat shit about him? Like, he could have just been, I don't know, if the shop was busy, it's his second shift, like he might have just been stressed out. I don't know why this guy's interview acts like he knows him, and maybe he does, but it just felt like weird. And then the connection with like the gunshots, like, what does this dude know? Anyway, another theory said that he was abducted by someone desiring to go to Chicago, maybe in a hurry, and then he was met with foul play when they arrived. So perhaps during the ride between home and work, he picked up someone and then was threatened to drive. Sergeant John Ridges, who is heading the investigation for the Wentworth Area Violent Crime Unit in Chicago, said, "To say it is a homicide, you have to say someone forced him into that garage with gas masks or at gunpoint, and we can't say that. I'm like, I don't know what's up with this dude, but I really don't like him. If he got into a fight and was possibly knocked unconscious, and maybe they just left him in his car and ran off, either by accident, the car was on and he died from carbon monoxide, or they purposely did this. I don't think it had to be that planned out for it to be a homicide. Anyway, the first theory was suicide, since it was confirmed that he had died of carbon monoxide poisoning, and no evidence connected to drugs was ever found. Some speculate maybe he did drive away from his family to reduce the risk of being found by someone he knew. However, it is sometimes rare to drive that far to commit suicide, but many do not believe this theory. His mother states, quote, "I really can't tell you what happened to my kid, but I think suicide is out of the question." Chad's mother goes on to say, "When you lose your only child, 1 foot of ours is already in the grave. We're just not the same people. We never will be. Our love for Chad just keeps us going, and all of our good memories. No matter how bad it gets or how the case comes out, it will never take away those memories. Cope is a word. We don't live. We just cope." On his tombstone, it reads, "He was our baby, our child, our son, our young man, our love for life." And that is the unsolved case of Chad Maurer. I really want to thank the person who suggested this case. It really felt like his parents, his mom, was such an advocate and continues fighting for answers, which takes such strength. So it's really an honor to cover this case. I also want to thank you guys for asking questions for a Q&A. It's been really cool questions. I really love them, so keep them going. I've been enjoying seeing them and thinking of answers, so I hope that you're having a good day or good night wherever you are, and that you have a good day tomorrow. And I'm going to see you in my next video.